Am I crown,
Ready?
y'all? Shelton did it. Ready whenever you are.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, January 12th, 2023. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comments? There being none. Election of officers. Before election of officers, I'd like to take a moment and welcome our newest Planning Commission member, Mr. Ben Tillman. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I've a lifelong association with Queen Anne County. As I say to people, I grew up coming here since I was about 5 years old. I've been living here full-time for about 20 years, retired. Have my feet in a bunch of camps. I'm married to a retired economic development director, so I'm acquainted with some of that in the state. I have served on the board of the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy. I've run the family farm for about 30 years, so I'm comfortable with what I consider to be a rather broad exposure to several different facets of Queen Anne County, and am very appreciative of the county commissioners who had the faith and support to appoint me to the position. I look forward to serving. Thank you.
Good, welcome aboard. Okay, election of officers.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may,
Sure.
in light of the fact of how well this committee has been run over the last 12 months, I would like to nominate you as chairwoman, Tom Lee as vice chairman, Kathy Dewitis as secretary, and John Shelton as clerk.
Any seconds?
Second.
Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Meeting minutes review?
Madam Chair, I propose that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Updates, legislation and legal matters. Amy and Stephanie.
Sorry. Good morning. Amy Murdoch, Planning Director. Happy New Year.
Stephanie Jones, Long Range Principal Planner.
So I think we have some substantive updates for you this morning, so we might take a little longer than we normally do. I wanted to update you on some soft items. One is that I wanted to let you know that the Winter Mako took place last week, and Queen Anne's County was very well represented on many of the panels for newly elected officials. This Winter Mako was specifically geared toward newly elected officials as it was an election cycle. And also, our keynote address at an evening event was delivered to us by our new governor, Wes Moore. So that was pretty nice. But yeah, Mike Clark, who is our Housing and Family Services Director, was on a panel. Lamont Cook was on a panel. I sat on a panel. And Heather Tonelli with Economic Development received an award in conjunction with the promotion of the agricultural industry and tourism. And this was a joint award shared by the Upper Eastern Shore Regional Council. So that was
Good.
Yeah, it was a great session, and like I said, Queen Anne's County was certainly at the table, and that was very nice. The legislative session began yesterday, and you will be hearing a lot from Rob Tracy, who is our liaison and who works with Todd Mon, our county administrator, and with Bruce Bariano, who is one of our lobbyists who tracks legislation for us. But you are going to be hearing a lot about some of the key planning initiatives, and I just want to let you know there's no information to report to you yet. Specifically, although this legislation has already passed, I know that you're going to be hearing about recreational marijuana and how Queen Anne's County is going to deal with that. And the answer is right now we don't know because the regulations have not been written, and we do not have that direction yet. So how that is going to play out, no one knows. We're all communicating, all of the planning directors are communicating with MACO and with other state officials to sort of outline what decisions we have to make and how we need to make them from a planning and land use perspective. And also, we don't know how licensing is going to work either. So if people are asking you a lot of questions, and we have been getting a lot of questions, the answer is we don't have answers yet, but it's at the top of all of our radars, and we'll get.
Are they planning on having it done by July 1 when it's supposedly effective?
I don't know.
Well,
But yes, the hope is that the direction will be given to us by then. I don't know if the local jurisdictions will be in a position by then to move forward with local legislation, but the state needs to have that direction in place by July. So, also, you're going to be hearing a lot about housing, affordable housing initiatives, and I don't know how that is going to work out. And there are also environmental matters that you're going to be hearing about. Stephanie has been asked to sit on a committee that will meet every Friday during the legislative session to look at climate legislation. I've been asked to sit on the planning committee that will meet every Friday. And also, there will be a housing committee that will meet as needed, and I'll be sitting on that committee with Mike Clark to represent Queen Anne's County. This is unusual. There aren't always committees that are assigned to track legislation, but we anticipate that it's going to be a busy season and that there will be some impactful legislation. So as this all unfolds, I'll be giving you updates, and then on the whole suite of other legislation, Rob Tracy will be updating you as needed with transportation legislation, some liquor board legislation, and some other things.
okay.
A staff announcement. We are fully staffed again. We've hired a new zoning inspector. His name is Mike Olds. He comes to us with a lot of enforcement experience. He's a retired Anne Arundel police officer. He started his career in Queen Anne's County in the Sheriff's Department and had retired from Anne Arundel and was working here in the Animal Control Division, and has hopped over to our department, and we're very happy to have him. So he's doing a great job so far. The learning curve is long, but he's definitely up for it. In addition, I wanted to update you on a minor site plan that you looked at, or you didn't look at it, that I brought to your attention in March, where your commission chair, Sharon Dobson, gave staff the thumbs up to proceed with an administrative review on a minor expansion to the Chick-fil-A. Normally, you would see these site plans because we have a policy that you review site plans when they're visible from Route 50. But since you'd already reviewed Chick-fil-A, and what they asked to do was a very minor expansion, they're trying to fix their traffic flow problems. It's a very popular restaurant, and there's often a backup. So they had initially installed one lane. They have now asked to install a dual lane and continue that dual lane around the entire building, and that involves the placement of a canopy. So we agreed to review that administratively in March. They just submitted, and in that submittal, what we realized was a part of that canopy is within the side yard setback. Now, the zoning district there is TC, Town Center, and reduced setbacks are encouraged in that district. And the Planning Commission has that authority and also has the authority to convey that authority to the planning director. So Ms. Dobson and I discussed that, and she has green-lighted staff to go ahead and continue with an administrative review, but we just wanted to let you know that that was happening. as construction occurs, and if you receive any questions as to why it didn't come before you. When there are these de minimis expansions on projects you've already seen, we're trying to streamline and not hold them up. Yes.
If you encourage reductions in setbacks, why don't you just change the setback?
Oh, we can look at that as we're updating
Okay, all
the
right.
land use section of our zoning code.
All right.
And I think the reason they're encouraged is in the TC district, you see most of those applications. So that language is meant to give this board the flexibility to reduce setbacks when it seems reasonable. It might not always be reasonable. But in this case, because of the adjacency of all of the other commercial uses, it's appropriate. Yep.
It's a parking lot to the side, is it not?
No, I
Is that the
think,
side the canopy's going out on?
Yeah.
is it a parking lot? I was thinking it
Toward
was,
the
I
big
was
lots.
thinking there was a right-of-way there.
There's a strip of green with a couple of
Yes.
trees in it,
Yeah.
and then the parking lot.
Yeah.
Parking lot, okay. Okay, I was thinking there was a little private road there or an access point, but it's the parking lot, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, I haven't been to Chick-fil-A in a while.
It's not your end of the county, right?
And then Stephanie has an update, a couple updates as well.
Yep, so in November, when you sent a recommendation to the county commissioners for the comprehensive rezonings, they held their public hearing this past Tuesday. They will be voting on those on their next meeting, which is the 24th. Also, armored storage growth allocation application, that public hearing for the county commissioners will occur on the 24th as well. So there'll be a lot going on the 24th, you could say, for projects that you all have seen and reviewed. Also, as well, the town of Centerville has completed their comprehensive plan. They sent it out for a 60-day review, so the county planning, we have reviewed it. It was a very good plan, very succinct, very easy to follow. But there were a few things that we kind of picked up on that we will provide comments on, and I just want to inform you all of those comments so you are aware of them. Some of those comments, basically, within their growth area, or where they plan to expand their growth area, that area is actually open space, deed-restricted open space. So we're going to provide the comment and indicate that, maybe perhaps this should be greenbelt. They're indicating it as complete neighborhood, which is for mixed use, which is a higher density mixed-use development, which is not consistent with deed-restricted open space. So we are going to provide that comment. As well, at the 213 and 301 interchange, which is not in their growth area, they have indicated an employment area, which is almost like a bubble around that area on their land use plan. For the county, that's industrial area, which is LIHS, which is light industrial highway service area. So these uses aren't really consistent with one another, employment and industrial. So we suggested that they take a look at maybe some type of joint agreement between the county and the town on how to move forward with that. With it not being consistent, they really need to take the time and really sit down and have conversations with the county. They do have interest in that area and potentially possible annexation, but obviously it's a little ways down the road. They are dealing with sewer issues as well, a lot like the county. So. And then one of the last things we wanted to point out to them, in our comprehensive plan, we took out basically all indications of funding or what the county would provide funding for. They have pointed out that they basically want the county to provide funding for their upgrades for sewer. With that, we've requested that they remove that from their comprehensive plan. Also, they need a spray irrigation field for their upgrade of their sewer, and they've wanted the county to work with them to potentially purchase that land, and that's not something that the county is doing at this point in time. So we've just requested that they remove that and update it as accordingly. So we'll provide a letter to their planning commission, basically with those comments, just as you all received when we went through like that 60-day review process for our comp plan. So. Yep, just wanted to give you that update.
Is that document available for public review, like on the town website?
I'll send it to you if
thanks.
you would like. And then also they did like a 6-page kind of condensed version of their plan, and I can send that to you.
Executive
Yeah,
survey kind
I
of
can
But
send
is
that
it
as
there
well.
for public review?
Yep, I think The review closes on, it's next week at some point in time. I can't remember the actual date of the close of the 60-day review. But yeah, you all could take a look at it if you want to. There are recommendations that are consistent with our recommendations in our comprehensive plan. They want to increase the trails. They want to also increase, what was it? Park areas. So there are things that are consistent with our plan as well.
Any questions? Is that it?
It.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Concept plan, Chesapeake Bay Bridge Marina. Who's doing it? Rob.
Happy New Year, everybody. This is our first meeting
Happy
back.
New Year.
Mr. Tillman, welcome. I'm Rob Gunter, Principal Planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning. As mentioned, we are here for the concept plan for the Bay Bridge Marina. They are proposing more than 119,000 square feet of commercial space. Also in that development would be 174 apartments. Today they are seeking a parking reduction and concept plan approval. Probably everybody knows where this is, but in case you don't, as you're traveling east on the Bay Bridge, first property on your right, the marina where Libby's Restaurant is, that's where this parcel is located. Here it is in an aerial view showing the existing conditions. It's on the south side of Route 50 at the end of Pier 1 Road, and the parcel totals 42.449 acres. Currently zoned urban commercial. It's located within the Chester-Stevensville growth area and the county's enterprise zone. So this is a clip of one of the concept plan sheets. The buildings with the dashed red line are existing. Those are existing commercial spaces. The ones with the solid red lines are the newly proposed buildings. The walkways are shown in orange lines. Trash cans, bike racks, and benches are the green and teal diamonds, which are located along the waterfront walkway around the marina. And in addition to that, there in the blue circle is a Vietnam Memorial statue. This project conceptually meets all the urban commercial development standards. In addition, this will require public water and sewer, and the applicant will need to make application to the Sanitary Commission, and an approved concept plan is part of that application. So as I mentioned, they are proposing 119,458 square feet of total floor area. That's split up between existing uses and new uses. Some of the existing uses include Libby's Restaurant, which is shown here as number 1. Buildings 3 and 4 are current office space. The small building here, number 7, is the ship store. Not shown on the sheet on the bottom right is the boat storage and repair buildings. They're outside the limit of disturbance of this project. Buildings 2, 5, and 6 are the 3 new commercial apartment buildings being proposed. So they would have first floor commercial space and apartments on all the floors above, for a total of 174 units. Buildings 2 and Building 6 would have 51 units apiece, and Building 5 would have 72. To support all the uses on site, the county code would require 884 parking spaces. The applicant is currently proposing 719. They are requesting a reduction of 165 spaces. They have brought their consultant with them who can speak much more detail about that. Their narrative was included in your packet for your review. So I took the concept plan and overlaid it on top of the aerial to give you an idea of what the property would look like with everything built. Conceptually, this project meets all Chapter 18 landscape requirements. It's located entirely within the critical area. It has a designation of intensely developed area, and the shoreline is a modified buffer area. It also meets all mitigation requirements for tree removal and increased lot coverage within that modified buffer area. Chapter 18 does provide for a 300-foot shore buffer The Planning Commission does have the ability to reduce that. And in 2008, that buffer was reduced to 0. Portions of the property are located within the floodplain. All floodplain ordinance regulations would be met with this, or would need to be met with this. Stormwater will be provided on site, and as is usual, DPW reviews that and ultimately provides an approval for that. There are no streams, woodlands, or non-tidal wetlands, and forest conservation regulations are not applicable because the property is within the critical area. So next is a series of pictures for the existing conditions. There's an inset map with an arrow giving you a rough idea of the direction we're looking. So this will be coming off of the Bay Bridge, looking at the Libby's Restaurant. This is entering the site. That office building you see there will be removed, and it will be a commercial apartment building. This is looking into the marina, probably in the location of the biggest commercial apartment building that will wrap this corner. These office buildings that you can see here on the sides will stay. This space here would be a commercial apartment building. This is looking east from Libby's Restaurant. It's the opposite side of the marina, looking across. Right here would be a commercial apartment building. Right here, these buildings would stay. This one would go. This is the proposed architecture at this time. All the new apartment buildings are proposed to be very similar to each other. And this would be the proposed conditions. Same thing, there's an inset map with an arrow giving you the rough direction that we're looking. These are obviously 2 new commercial apartment buildings. So you can see the 3 new buildings, the first one down by Libby's. This existing structure will be removed. These 2 will stay. And you have the 2 new commercial apartment buildings that wrap around the marina. This is the opposite view. This would be looking basically from the beach club or from the water. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is here to speak. Can give you much more detail, I'm sure.
Mr. Gunther, I just have one point of clarification, if you will, regarding the reduction of the shoreline buffer. I think you have you have 08 in your presentation as when that was negated or removed. And in the staff report, you have 1989 of August. Is one of those a typo, or?
One of those is a typo.
Okay. It seemed like the 89 one was awfully antiquated.
Yeah, it probably is.
Not to call you out on the first meeting back after
They're
the holiday.
pretty far off.
I'm assuming we'll go with the 2008 is probably most likely the appropriate.
Let's assume it was done. I'm not sure. I can clarify the date for you.
Yeah, well, the 89 just jumped out as awfully old. All right, thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Joseph Stevens on behalf of Bay Bridge Marina. Happy New Year to you all. I'm representing Bay Bridge Marina as Land Use Council, and I have Tom Davis here, who is the engineer. Also here is Mr. Walt Petrie and Tim McGrath, who are principals in Bay Bridge Marina. Wes Guckert, who's done the parking analysis. He's a traffic consultant, an engineer. And he's also done some preliminary traffic assessment in this area for Pier 1 Road, and he'll be able to speak to you on those 2 things. And then we have the architect. If you have questions for him online, he's on Zoom, Mr. Jim Ravello. So what I'd like to do is have Tom Davis give you a little overview, a little more detail on things such as stormwater management, the buffer, because we are doing some buffer mitigation here for the 100-foot buffer, even though it's in a buffer exempt area, what's it called? Buffer, the new buffer modified. Buffer modified area, formerly buffer exempt areas. There's still required mitigation. And then he'll discuss some of the circulation, internal circulation aspects of the project. And then we'll have Mr. Guckert come up and talk about the parking reduction. and Pier 1 Road. And then we'll have Mr. Petrie come up and just give you an overview of his vision here. I mean, he's done just he acquired the property 2 years ago and is really just done a wonderful job with Libby's, and is trying to create that same redevelopment infusion into the rest of the property. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you. William Thomas Davis Jr., professional engineer with DMS and Associates. I've been working on this property since about 1989, thereabouts.
Oh, maybe that's where the number came from.
I was involved with the development of buildings 2 and 3, site plan, the boat repair building, and then a recently constructed storage building in the boat repair area. And our firm and my previous firm with McCrone did all the work on the Chesapeake Bay Beach Club, which included multiple buildings, parking lot, and subdivision of that property off of the marina. The bulk of the impervious cover that you see out there today was developed shortly after critical area law was adopted. A gentleman by the name of Barrett Peterson came in, expanded the marina to the boat basin that you see today, and developed Building 1, which is a commercial office building that was demolished just recently. There's an office building that will be demolished in the area of our building 5 and 6, and parking lot was all constructed to support those uses.
Wait, Tom, can you pull up the map that shows 1, 2, and the numbers?
So in the area of building 5 and 6, there's an existing office building that'll be demolished as part of this. As Rob had indicated, the property is zoned urban commercial, buffer modified, and intensely developed with respect to critical areas. When Mr. Peterson developed the project originally, there was little to none stormwater management provided on the site. At that point, critical areas hadn't developed their 10% pollution reduction standards, and at the time, it was considered a direct discharge of tidewater, so there was really no water quality aspect included in any of the impervious cover that's out there today. Maybe some small treatment areas along the boardwalk before it discharged to the boat basin. Our proposal is to treat impervious cover to comply with both the county code and the critical area code, which is we have to treat 50% of the existing impervious cover and any new, and implement ESD practices in the form of bioretention systems, submerged gravel wetlands, and it's not shown on any of these plans, but we did identify locations and provided adequate area for those kind of systems to treat the runoff. And the Department of Public Works has supported our calculations and conceptual stormwater management plan. The property currently served by public sewer and public water. We will reconfigure existing sewer and water lines on site to accommodate these new developments and work with the sanitary district to assure that proper water flow and sanitary sewer systems can accommodate the development. We also were working with Husted Landscaping. Vernon Husted is a local landscape architect on Ken Island, and he developed a comprehensive landscape plan to comply with the county code requirements for buffers, parking lot, and on-lot landscaping. And in addition, because this is in the critical area buffer area, any increase in impervious cover within the 100-foot buffer has to be mitigated on site. So in conjunction with the required landscaping for the county code, we also developed a plan for the plantings to address mitigation. And of course, as Rob's indicated here on Orange, we did develop an extensive connection of public walkways and pedestrian connections that would connect to the sidewalk that's ultimately going to be developed on the Bay Manor project there on Pier 1 Road that would connect to the Chesapeake Bay Beach Club project where the Inn and Noxie's Table is. And then along this boat basin, there's like a 15 to 16 foot wide promenade walkway that will be open to the public, benches provided, and trash cans, bike racks, etc. So, one thing I'd like to point out on the parking, Mr. Guckert's going to talk more in detail about it, but the one point of discussion would be that the boat repair and storage building required like some 85 parking spaces, and realistically, there's only 10 or 12 employees that work at that facility. And because the building's so large to accommodate yachts and whatever, when we did the math, it required this large, number of parking spaces to accommodate it. And realistically, they only have like 10 or 12 employees and visitors that come and look at their boats or whatever. So that was one of the things I want to point out. If we use 15 spaces for that facility, our parking reduction, we would be providing 88% of what would be required by the code. And just to correlate that with another project that had first floor commercial and second floor apartments, we did the Chesapeake Village Center. It's in Stevensville on Maryland Route 18, right opposite State Street. That project was granted by the Planning Commission a reduction down to 87% of the required parking, and very similar first floor commercial uses and apartments above. To my knowledge, most of the commercial spaces are developed on that site, and I've heard no problems with off-street parking. So just as an aside, but Mr. Guckert is the expert on the parking. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer.
Why don't you stay here?
Okay.
Wes, come up here. All right, I'm going to have Mr. Guckert come up and discuss the parking in Pier 1 Road.
Sure.
All right, come on up, Wes. You can introduce yourself to the Planning Commission. That'd be great. Do you want me to pass this out now, or you want to wait a minute?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Good morning, Wes Guckert with the Traffic Group. We're a firm of traffic engineers and transportation planners. We did conduct and work very closely with Tom and the developer on the parking issues. And I think there are two things that are important to understand. One that Tom already pointed out, and that is the boatyard, by virtue of what it is, required a significant amount of parking, that 80, 85 spaces, that really is just not practical or needed for a boat repair yard. And what we did in our analysis was to plug in 15 parking spaces for that. The other thing that's a bit different is that the Institute of Transportation Engineers and Urban Land Institute have been studying land uses and parking demand for many, many years, as you may be aware. And the most recent ITE parking study indicates that for office space, it should be in the range of 2.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet versus what the county, the Queen Anne's County Code indicates. So when we take and we examine the fact that there's an unrealistic amount of parking for the boat repair yard, and reducing parking for the office space, we come up with about 752 spaces. That includes using all of the Queen Anne County Code, with the exception of the boatyard and the office. 752 spaces versus the 719 that we're providing. And so without sharing spaces, we're now about 33 spaces short. And when you take on the second page and you look at the sharing analysis that we did, we come up with about 615 spaces that are needed versus the 752. And as you may be aware, sharing is something that governments look at not only in Maryland, but throughout the country, where you want to make sure that you're not over parking, so that you're not creating additional impervious surface, so that when you look at sharing, we've got on a Saturday, which is going to be the peak time, the office space for the most part to begin with is not going to be used. The retail will be, even the boatyard on a Saturday is not going to have a full complement of employees. So we examined all of the land uses on a Saturday to look at sharing, and we come up with about 615 spaces versus the 752 that would be needed without sharing. And of course, we're providing 719, and that compares to the 615 with sharing. So we believe that from a practical point of view and a realistic point of view, providing the 719 spaces is not only practical but justified, and of course not creating an adverse effect. You know, in many instances, you've got commercial or residential development, and planning commissions like yourself are often concerned about overflow parking into residential neighborhoods. Don't have that here. And so we believe that we've got more than sufficient parking to accommodate the overall development of the property. Comments, please?
I have no idea what I'm looking at here.
Okay.
What's
let's-
BBM?
Bay Bridge Marina.
Okay, all right.
We can go through, and I
I don't know if I
tried.
want to go through the whole thing, be perfectly honest with you.
Okay.
But, I mean, looking at your spreadsheet.
Yes, sir. That's more complicated, obviously, than
Yeah,
the
I mean,
metrics.
You just, where are you getting your numbers from? I mean, the office space, like just start with land use, office, 40,000 square feet,
Yes, sir.
right? Marinas, 235 slips, number of employees, and you just rate residential's 174 units. Is that a county calculation, or is that a traffic route calculation?
The 174 are the number of units that are being proposed.
Okay, all right.
All of the land use is what is either existing or being proposed for this concept plan.
Okay, well then move over to the right, to the boatyard, one boatyard.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then underneath that says restaurant equals 83 spaces?
Yes, sir.
I mean, what is that?
Those are the number of parking spaces that are required for the restaurant.
Per the code. That's per the county code?
Yes, sir.
Not through your?
Yes, sir.
through
The
your
only thing,
machinations.
the only change to the county code is the boatyard. If you go down to the next set of blocks, the boatyard where we've got 15 spaces instead of the 85 spaces for repair, we have less than 15 employees. And then the office is the only other thing that's changing from the county code down to what is traditional at 2.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Everything else is according to the county code.
You okay with it now, Bill?
Not really.
How can I help?
Well, I feel like I'm being sold something here, you know?
No,
And
sir.
And you taking a lot of effort to do it.
No, sir. This is not.
I'm,
This is not out of the ordinary as it relates to land use and parking and shared parking. It's shared parking is something that communities, planning boards, town councils, county commissioners want to see occur, so that a development is not over parking and creating things such as environmental impacts, much more so than what is needed.
I'd be more worried about everybody parking on the streets.
And in this case,
Plugging the streets.
and in this case, there's no, there certainly is plenty of street frontage, if indeed that were the case, from the marina out to Route 8.
So you're saying there's parking spaces on the street?
There, people, if indeed your concern, Mr. Sylvester, is overflow parking off of the site, there is a dramatic amount of frontage along Pier 1 Road between the site and Route 8, if indeed that were to ever happen.
But based on your
Allowed to
analysis, that's
consider
not.
that? Really?
Excuse me?
Are we allowed to consider that in our decision-making?
No, sir, that's why I'm saying that we don't believe that's going to happen. We believe there's going to be more than sufficient parking. We think the site's going to need 615. We're providing 719.
And the code, the county code under section 18183 recognizes that these types of mixed-use projects will come to the planning commission and gives you that authority. This is not something that, we're trying to create out of whole cloth. The code has those provisions. If you're comfortable with the information that Mr. Guckard's provided and with the reductions that we're asking, that is. And obviously, this is concept plan approval, so, we'll have to come back with the full engineered site plan if we get to that point, if we get to that level. And while we would like the approval to reduce parking, when we come up for a site plan, if you continue to have concerns, we'll have to address those as well.
To answer your question, no, we do not want the cars to park on the street.
I didn't think so, honestly.
Neither do we.
It happens.
Yeah, again, we do not either. We think that we've got, with 719, that we've got more than sufficient parking
Okay,
to accommodate everyone.
I'm willing to move on.
If I may, you stated that you compared parking analysis with Baltimore, Washington metro area. I'm having a hard time understanding what the Bay Bridge Marina and that area has in common with the Baltimore, Washington area.
For clarification, Mr. Tillman, after we received comments from the county, we made adjustments, and this sheet no longer takes that in consideration. So we adjusted because the county themselves had concern about using that kind of local data. So we adjusted and used exactly the Queen Anne's County Code.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We had the same question, like, why is that even relevant in this case? This is the first time we're seeing this information before you today. But
One of the benefits of being new.
But as a result of being new, you picked up on that issue, and we did too, and we adjusted so that we used the county code. Thank
One
you,
other
sir.
question, while we're,
It says ITE rate, what's that?
ITE is the Institute of Transportation Engineers.
Is that the county rate?
No, sir, that's the one rate that the county did not. That's a national organization like Urban Land Institute.
So there's two changes from the
Correct.
county rate, the boatyard and the offices.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And the county code is 4 spaces per 1,000 versus 2.5
For the office.
per office.
Yeah.
And one thing I would like to point out, I mentioned the Chesapeake Village Center. Mr. Azar, who was a developer of that, actually had a first floor commercial use with apartments above. And to support our reduction on that, he actually monitored the actual usage of spaces for his original facility. If you're familiar with it, there's 2 newer buildings and then there was an existing building. And that was what we used for the basis for the parking reduction for him, down to 87% of what was required by the code. And as again, if you allow the flexibility on the boat repair building, which we think that's way over parked from a calculation standpoint, and agreed to this reduction, we're at 88% of providing the required parking. From, not taking into account Mr. Guckard's calculations, that's just, on the straight numbers. And
Strictly using the county code, we're at 88% of the county code, is what you're saying.
Yeah, if they agree that the boat repair building is way over parked, which I believe.
I think everybody.
I think I
including
originally,
staff.
on my original application, I put 12 employees for that, and staff required me to use that code, is what I recall.
we have 5 employees.
yeah, we have to
5.
calculate based upon what the
Yeah,
code
we have,
requires.
so
We don't just get to pick
it's the
and choose.
closest use in the parking calculation for it. But again, it's a boat repair building. If it was maybe an auto repair where you have more employees working on a vehicle or whatever, and just the large size of it to house boats in there creates, that
Mr.
large.
Petrie just informed us that it's only 5 employees.
Okay. I think we put 12 initially, so.
60-something spaces for that. That's just.
On that, it's like 80.
One other question, if I may. It seems to me that a developer like this would not want to get the reputation of having inadequate parking.
Exactly.
And I understand that. So why are you so interested in reducing the parking spaces? What benefit does it bring to either you, the county, or some other entity?
The benefit,
They get to build as many apartments as they want.
I kind of thought that was the answer, and, you know, bear with me, I'm new, but conceptually, it seems to me that you'd be more inclined to want more parking spaces to attract more people, and I just park with that.
it's not a circumstance, Mr. Tillman, where if a little is good, more is better. It is not that, because to build all these extra spaces just for the sake of building them when they're not needed just does not make any sense economically. Number one.
that, yeah.
Number two, it creates additional runoff and pollution, and that's in no one's best interest either. So it's a matter of, you're right, economics is one. Just to spend $5,000 a parking space just because makes no sense. When developers like Mr. Petrie and others are convinced that they don't need to build them, why build them just because? And that's why these types of shared parking studies, both nationally and internationally, are done on a regular basis, because typically county codes have not always kept up with current conditions. It's like work from home. As we know now, we've got circumstances where 5 times as many people are working from home than used to. But county codes and state codes are not necessarily keeping up with circumstances as it relates to traffic impacts. And so what we're doing here is advising our client what is going to be the proper amount of parking. And in our opinion, he's got more than enough for the conditions that are being proposed.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir. Mr. Reese?
Thank you for your presentation. I did have a couple questions.
Since you're zooming in, can you identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry. My name is Jeff Reese, Planning Commission. I apologize I can't be there in person. However, through technology, I'm able to attend through Zoom. My question, in your report, you note that you just made the comment that a lot of people telework now more than anything, which that's duly noted, which means people are going to be home more, which reduces that shared space between the office and the residential. You also made some comments in the fact that people are going to be out and about on the weekends. I don't know if you spent much time on Kent Island on a Saturday or a Sunday. Most people don't leave their house. Traffic is one of our major issues that we have here, so people stay at home. Those that are fortunate to live up and down the Route 8 and 18 corridor, they're able to make it to Love Point Park and attend, games and events. However, did you take into account that maybe from November through mid-March, you're probably going to have adequate parking, but from mid-March through October, you're going to have a high influx? Was any of that taken into account for your calculations?
We did not do a month-by-month or a day-by-day calculation, but it certainly was considered when we made our projections for the county and for the developer. Yes, sir.
Thank you. The other question I have, the 80-plus parking spaces in the boatyard, are those striped, and are they pervious or impervious?
The 80 spaces is what the county code requires for the size of the building. The 15 spaces that we're proposing will be striped. And Tom, you've got to answer on the perviousness.
Yeah, the parking spaces for the boat repair building are in front of the building, and then there's 7 or 8 down near the boat lift area. And that's all existing under current conditions, yes. And the 85 spaces is just the calculation per county code. It's not that we have 85 parking spaces out there currently. There's only 10 or 12. It's cut off.
To succinctly answer your question, it's gravel, so it's impervious.
It's all gravel. If you look at the current image, that's where the boat repair building is.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it's pervious material right now because it's all gravel.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
No, they consider.
No, it's impervious.
Oh, I'm sorry, impervious. I'm
It's
sorry.
impervious surface.
Sorry. If you look at the images up, where all the boats are is all impervious gravel, pave, millings, what have you. Do you have that, Mr. Reese? Can you see the image?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
How many parking spaces are on site now?
Let me see here. We had 571. And if you've been there, a lot of those are unused because they're just planned out for other buildings in here that aren't shown on here.
Okay. All right. Wes, could you go over your preliminary assessment on what you've done in terms of looking at the intersection at Route 8 and Pier 1 Road? And I'll preface that just so, and as the Planning Commission knows, and Mr. Gunther had put in his staff report, if this receives concept plan approval, the developer will have to do a full APFS, adequate public facilities road study there with current, with current traffic counts and all that, as the county will scope. It'll tell them which intersections to look at, what time of day, and what time of year to look at those, and then that will have to be approved by the county APFS technical committee before we can even come back to you with a site plan. So, but this is a prelude to it because it's question mark, and I know from experience that there's a lot of interest in traffic issues in this area. So, Wes, go ahead.
And what we've done on a preliminary basis is to look at the intersection of Route 8 at Pier 1 Road. We believe that with this concept plan, there will need to be some modifications. The traffic signal will need to be improved. We want to create, in all likelihood, a dedicated left turn lane from Pier 1 Road onto northbound Route 8 with a dedicated left turn signal that we think is not only will be needed from a capacity and operations point of view, but from a safety point of view, because as you are, many of you are probably familiar, as you approach that intersection today, and with Thompson Creek traffic coming from the opposite direction, it gets a little bit funky, and we think we can improve the operation, and that would be part of studying that type of thing as part of our analysis for APF when we get to that point.
Madam Chair, another question, if I may. Historically, that area has housed the boat show every year. Do you have any indication from the ownership that they intend to continue that boat show?
Yeah.
And that's a significant parking concern at that point in time.
Yeah.
Because you reduce that parking for all the boats.
Mr. Reese, Mr. Petrie will be up, the owner, in just a minute, and I'm sure he'll answer that question for you.
Thank you.
Done with Mr. Guckert, I'll have him come up right now.
Well, I do have a question. We talked about shared parking and so on. Did you consider the competition on the property for parking spaces for disparate uses? For example, when the restaurant is busy, are tenants on the westernmost building likely to be parking 2 or 3 buildings down from their apartment?
I'm not sure I
Maybe you could
completely
put up
understand the question, but are you saying that
Maybe you could put up the
that
concept
apartment
plan.
tenants would be
what?
would have?
The concept plan, so we can. So in building number 2, competing with people using building number 1.
And again, the concept of shared parking is such that since we're not going to have dedicated parking spaces for any uses.
Competing for the same spot.
Yeah, if they are out, if people in apartment building 2 are out and come back and they need to be moved down a little bit, then that's what shared parking is all about. They've got to share the spaces. It's not a dedicated.
When you come back from work at 6:30 at night when the restaurant's busy, that's the competition I'm referring to.
That's correct.
So you might be down at building 3 or 4 to get to building 2.
Anything is possible, but that's part of the shared parking concept.
And the other thing, Chris, we do have a bank of parking that would be, more clearly utilized for the marina, the restaurant, the ones there along the bay and right where the blue circle is. And that's also why we have the pedestrian connections to allow people to get to and from the parking spaces to their units.
I understand. It also tends to be where people come to, that's where the marina office is as well.
It's in building 3 now.
Oh, it's in 3? Okay.
I'm going to have Mr. Petrie come up. Come on up, Walt.
I'm Walt Petrie.
Come on up here, Walt.
Oh, okay. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Walt Petrie, managing member of the Bay Bridge Marina LLP, and we have appeared in front of you before to get a plan approved, which you guys recommended, but it ended up dying at the county commissioner's office. But this plan is a result of studying the code, understanding what was permitted per the code, and to proceed with a plan that doesn't ask for a lot of changes. So we've spent a lot of time working on this, and we are hopefully going to get our approval today so we can proceed to apply for water and sewer. This plan is not necessarily the final plan, just so everybody's aware. We are looking at other options. There's lots of different ideas being thrown around, but we decided to proceed with the plan because it's permitted per the code, and we are hopeful that you'll approve it today. With respect to the boat show, there is going to be a boat show in the foreseeable future, in the next year or two. When this is constructed, there will not be a boat show here. So there would be just too much demand, and it just would be something that wouldn't work. So definitely this year and probably next year, but when this is built, it just will not, it'll no longer be here.
Thank you, Commissioners. I think that's all that we have formally for you, unless you got any questions for any of the team members here. Otherwise, we'll...
Questions?
I just have one, that you're going to leave 2 buildings, existing buildings, among 3 and 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why?
We need additional office there already. We're actually going to totally renovate, and we will be in for permit in the next 30 days to renovate buildings 3 and 4. They need updating. They've been there for 30-some years, and the office spaces are in bad shape. We're going to reposition the lower level where the pool is, create a bigger clubhouse. So the answer is it's office space we'll have at least, and we're making a major investment in the existing buildings to improve them.
So none of the
Those
2.
two are also
I'm
the
sorry.
newer of the buildings that were constructed on the site. They're the newer of the 2.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be critical, I'm just asking. So I was just under the impression there might be office space on the bottom floors of 2, 3, and 5, or 2, 5, and 6, excuse me. There's not. Usually I see retail space on bottom.
We're proposing first floor commercial on buildings 2, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
With apartments above.
I mean, I just looked at I think it's you're looking south, that elevation from 50. It's like this big hole. You've got these great big apartment buildings. all along there, and then you have these whole with these two smaller buildings.
Sir,
And-
I don't understand the whole question.
Well, can you pull up the elevation?
That one, or,
Keep going. Like I say, it's looking south from Route 50.
probably this one.
No, that wasn't it. I didn't
The
think-
first one from the bridge?
No, well, no, it really wasn't. It's,
The existing. Now we're into the renderings.
I don't know where I saw it then. But you have a tall apartment building here, and then you have tall apartment buildings here, and then you have these two. There you go. That was it.
Story office buildings, correct.
They're
You know.
two-story buildings. The two existing are two-story.
It just, to me, it looks a little out of place.
Sorry?
It looks a little out of place there. I don't know if I should be concerned about that, but, you know.
I don't know how to answer the question. Yeah, in a perfect world, you'd rip it all down and build all apartments, but because there is a demand right now.
Sorry?
Because there's a demand today for office,
Okay.
and we are spending literally $1 million plus upgrading those two buildings that are here, that remain. We think it's a good investment, and we have tenants that want it. So
Yeah, I'll say that again.
we have tenants that want to be there.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
As far as the first floor commercial, there's a lot of it. And as you guys travel around the county, you see a lot of vacant, what I call see-through commercial space on apartments. I'm in conversations with the Beach Club to potentially put hotel suites on the first floor. And that would take up, and that's a permitted use under the current code. And it's something that I am hopeful to be able to do. But until I actually get water and sewer here or get my concept plan approval, I really don't have anything to show somebody that I can produce. So until I get the concept plan approval, apply for water and sewer, which hopefully I will get, then I can get into serious conversation with the Beach Club about expanding their hotel, the current hotel, and it would be suites only. And right now, we're talking about approximately 32 suites that would take the first floor of building 1 in 6, I think. So,
One.
excuse me?
One's Libby's.
Sorry?
Building 1 is Libby's.
Oh, sorry. Well, I don't see the plan up there. Building 2, which is the building next to Libby's, and the straight building next to the boat launch area. So, yeah, building 6 and building 2.
I've got to say that if the concept plan comes back and it's the first floor commercial is not retail, office, and storage like it is now, I don't know about the parking. Parking may or may not work. It may be more, but it may be less. But I don't know. It's up to you guys. It's your purview. But staff would just throw some
Like
caution
the
out there.
hotel parking and residential parking to be at the same time of day.
I mean, we recognize that. I mean, that if a use changed substantially or materially from what we talked about here, and if you grant us the parking reduction, and Walt then does ink a type of deal like he's just talking about, and we meet with staff and it changes the parking, then we'll come back to you before we come in with the site plan and say, are you okay with this reduction or revision and so on. We wouldn't just assume that, we can go ahead and keep reducing it or add uses that increase parking demand and rely on an old parking reduction request. And we come back in and have that discussion with you as we move closer to site plan.
You're looking at, if this were to be built as proposed, you're looking at $60 million. I'm not going to spend $60 million and not have enough parking. And if you look at national studies, and I've been involved in development for a long time, if you look across the country, everybody's reducing their parking requirements. Everybody's, i.e. retail. If you have a shopping center now, it used to be 5 cars per 1,000. Now it's 3. Why is it 3? Because of Amazon and the demand for bricks and mortar buildings and how much business they're doing. So why, if you have a 100-acre site, big shopping center site, and you reduce that from a 5 parking ratio to even a 4 parking ratio, you get 100 cars per acre. On a 100-acre site, that gives you 10 acres of land that you don't need. You don't need parking for. So what do you do with that? You redevelop it, or you turn it to green space, or you do something with it. But to build all this parking and just have it sit there and not do anything is kind of silly. So this is a national thing that's going on, and I think your parking requirements need to be looked at as far as reducing some of them, because you're requiring more parking than really realistically is needed.
Commission, Steve Cahoon from DPW is here. He can come up and speak to you regarding any change in the concept plan and whether that may or may not affect allocation requests or the granting of. So you may want to hear from him.
Sure. Yeah.
Steve?
Thank you. Steve Cahoon with the Department of Public Works, and I just want to be clear that this proposal and this concept was evaluated on what was presented as a permitted use. Hearing that it's not the final use and it's subject to change, that would impact APFO approvals in the future, what gets submitted for APFO, traffic, the parking calculations that were submitted, but most importantly, sewer allocation. Here we have the applicant proposing something permitted by right, in the code, to get in front of the Sanitary Commission to get the sewer allocation. But if it changes in the future, sewer may not be there for those future uses. So it's, the change from office space from a lower sewer use to a hotel, which is a higher sewer use, capacity may not be there. Right now, there's approximately 29,000 gallons of sewer allocation available in the commercial pool. And this proposal will be using about 26,000 gallons of that, leaving about 3,000 gallons in that commercial pool. So that's the commission, the decision that'll be moving forward. If the project moves forward, the applicant's next step would be seeking APFO approval, and we would hope the APFO approval would come before requesting allocation. But requesting the sewer allocation will be before the Sanitary Commission.
Madam Chair, if I may, Steve, are they currently S2, W2?
They are S1, W1 because water and sewer exists on site. So they have the sewer designations, so there's no amendment to the water and sewer plan to change the designation on the property. It's going to be specifically a sewer allocation request.
But because it's over 5,000 gallons a day, it would require a project amendment.
It would go to the Sanitary Commission for the sewer allocation, the water and sewer allocation.
Because it's over 5,000 gallons.
There isn't a project amendment provision anymore. I think they took that out of the plan. But we still have to go to the Sanitary Commission and make the request.
So just the hearing that this isn't the final project, it's subject to change, has a domino effect on all the approvals now and in the future. And some of those may not be able to achieve with the limitations on infrastructure.
Steve, before you leave, if I may, can you go through the 29,000, 26,000 gallon sewage allocation? It was my understanding that we are at discharge capacity for that plant already, if not near it. But would you go through and please just...
So there's a residential pool and a commercial pool. The commercial pool had some allocation remaining. It has approximately 29,000 gallons of allocation.
Commercial only.
Commercial only.
These are commercial apartments.
Right.
So they go in the commercial pool.
Right, but they're actually a mixed, which is why we call it mixed development. But for sewer allocation purposes...
For sewer allocation purposes, we look at, and we have looked at, commercial apartments. By definition, apartments are for rental. They're owned by one entity, and under the code, they have to go above commercial uses. So these, the Sanitary Commission, but through policy, has looked at it as this is a commercial operation in the business of renting apartment space. Very different than buying and selling units, which would be residential density. That was the proposal before the Planning Commission last year or the year before, trying to allow residential within the commercial zoning district. A commercial apartment is the only type of residential use permitted in this commercial zoning district, hence the application before you today.
Right, but so the 29K commercial is currently what is available at the plant?
Is what is unallocated.
Unallocated.
Right.
And if this proposal moves forward, based on what we're looking at today, it would take 26 of that 29?
Yes.
So we'd be left with 3,
Approximately. Yes.
approximately.
It fluctuates with, the allocation doesn't fluctuate, but what we have to do is monitor flows every month to know the flows going through the plant. So we have the amount of allocation which has been granted to uses, and that's our accounting process for how much the plant can support. But we also monitor the flows going through the sewer treatment plant to know how much is actually going through at the time.
Right.
So those two, we have to watch and make sure those work together.
Thank you.
Steve, I have one more question, if you're done, Commissioner Lee.
Yes, I am, thank you.
Does that 29,000 allocation, is that already taken into account the reduction from what is proposed at the Bell Farm?
It accounts for allocation being granted to the Bell Farm, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll step down, and then we'll be here if you have further questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment? Do we have a public comment?
We'll let everybody know they have 30 minutes, right?
Yes.
Ahead of time.
Before we start public comment, we want you to know you have 3 minutes. You ready? I'm going to take a 5-minute break. 5-minute break. Let's bring the meeting back to order. Good grief.
It's because of that fella right there. That's it, that's what it is.
Okay, now we're ready for public comment. Please state your name clearly and distinctly. They're having trouble with, when they transcribe, with some of the names. And you're limited to 3 minutes. David Humphreys? And also announce where you're from.
Up here?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. No, good morning. Still morning. My name is David Humphreys. I live at 788 Mooring Circle in Stevensville. More importantly, I am a transportation and traffic engineer, a professional licensed engineer with over 50 years of experience. My real concern is that the site impact, not the on-site activities, is what you have to consider first. You have not considered this. There's a variety of reasons for that, but Route 8 at 301 and 50 is probably the worst interchange, at least on Kent Island. It's a diamond interchange. It was identified by a comprehensive study as one that needed to be rebuilt into a full cloverleaf. There have been other proposals about that, but it is a dangerous place in overcapacity during the AM and the PM. There's a proposed Royal Farms development going on. Collectively, the intensity of this area and the transition, move and weave transition from 2 to 1 lanes, left turn lanes coming off, this is a huge accident potential coming up here. The county does not have a traffic engineer or transportation planner. They're sort of the same thing. And you must have that expertise on the front end, planning time, when you're looking at and considering the intensity of developments. You cannot rely just on the traffic engineer impact that is brought about by someone who is hired by the developer. And I'm not trying to impose any evil thoughts here, but you must, with your expertise, assess the off-site impacts. You must change your process so that this occurs, and you have that technical capability. There are other ways to get it. You could have a firm that you have on hold. You could have somebody like part-time like me, but not me because I'm retired. I've offered my expertise to the county on a variety of issues. I was involved in transfer of technology with NASA for a number of years in the research world. I have developed a plan on how to make the 5301 problem basically go away on Sundays, on the weekends here. I can't even get any attention from the county. Nobody paid me for that. I did it pro bono. That is possible to do with the situation we have now. We have nothing until a new bridge comes. The new bridge will bring its own problems, but that's 20 or 30 years away. I'll be dead. So my intent to you here is not to complain about a development, although I believe it to be way too intense, but to say you must change your process so that up front, consideration of mobility, because you have land.
Mr. Humphreys, your time's up.
Okay, I'm going to finish with a statement anyway. Land and mobility equals land use. Remember that, because you've not considered mobility. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen Bennett?
Good morning.
Morning.
Helen Bennett, live on Kent Island, Chester. Mr. Humphrey said some good points. And it's true, every development we're seeing is not operating in and of itself. We have to consider the fact that Ellendale is not finished, Royal Farms has been proposed, and now this one. And I'm asking you to give more weight and consideration to your citizens instead of the financial condition of a developer. One thing that's talked about is the 18 units for the MPDUs. And so far, of all your existing developments, only one developer has ever provided moderately priced dwelling units. Everybody else has given you money in lieu of, and that money does not account for moderately priced dwelling units. I don't think it's equal at all. And until that MPDU changes the laws to say that they're required to give the units, they could change and often do. The code requires the parking, so maybe you just say no. It requires the parking. It's funny that they're meeting code for some things, and so the code's good. Not meeting code for some things, so the code is bad. They feel as if there's more than sufficient parking. Well, I feel that the code's there for a reason. So we both have these feelings, and we all know that by the time something is built, usually it's already at capacity by the time something is opened. I will say that on the traffic studies that are coming, one thing that we got on the Royal Farms, they presented a traffic study that already accounts for the Thompson Creek connector, which is not even funded, let alone opened. But I did try to get accident reports, and it's hard because approximately 50% is answered by the county, approximately 50% incidents are answered by the state. But of the ones I got from the county, in 2022, there were more than 50 incidents on the intersections on Route 8. And so you double that at least, because that's state. So you're talking over 100 incidents that were called just currently, let alone once any other developments are done. And I would think that the safety of your existing citizens, like I said, should take more weight. The water and sewer allocation, you take it all up, and it may just not be the best use for it. And I wouldn't say that the traffic gets funky like they use in their words. It's just dangerous. And we just deserve better than that. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dennis Leahy.
Good morning.
Morning.
First, my name is Dennis Leahy. I live on Kent Island in Bay Bridge Cove. First, I will address parking. So I'm a little confused. I hear we might do this or we might do that. And that was addressed by different individuals. So what I do know is that this 174 units will not be a low-income affordable housing units. These will be affluent populations. And I guarantee you there will be 2 cars per unit, not 1.25 or 1.35 as the developer professes. I have 2 cars per unit at 348 vehicles. Again, this is an affluent population, and they will have these vehicles. The other concern I have, especially with commercial to residential, okay, it happens all the time. Apartments change to condominiums. Now, if that can be converted, and this allocation then becomes, at some point in time, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know how that works. I'm not an expert. But I do know this. If you're going to do this project, you better have it in writing that this cannot be converted from apartments to condominiums. Now, I don't know how long that should be for, 20 years, 25 years, but the impact on this community is strong enough. My other concern, and it was mentioned before, this is not a little funky Thompson Creek traffic light. It is absolutely horrendous. I live there. I've tried to walk it once. I'll never do that again. I tried to bike it. I have an electric bike, thank God, because I could move quickly to get away from cars. So we are now in a condition that it's already terrible. We throw beach traffic in. We throw all these other houses. We throw retail into this area. I'm assuming they're going to have food service. So that gets pulled off of Route 50 into there. Everybody wants to leave to get back on Route 50. This is an absolute mess, and it's already bad. And again, please take note about changing these apartments to condo, because that needs to be in writing, and also no boat show needs to be in writing, because you can say what you want to say. They've said a lot already, and they've already changed what they've said. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Newsback.
Hi, Sharon Newsback. I live in Stevensville, Maryland, Kent Island Estates. I'm against this concept plan. It will add to the congestion we already have on and off Route 50. I live off Route 8, and it is already hard enough to get home with all the new homes that are being built on Kent Island Estates and Bay Bridge Cove. Like Mr. Reese was saying, I am one of the Queen Anne's County citizens that is stuck in my home in the summer, during the week or weekends. Please have common sense and vote no to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne Smythe.
I'm Suzanne Smythe. I live at 264 Mooring Circle. I'm opposed to this project being built. It's not just a little bit funky, it's really super dangerous. My unit faces all the proposed projects, Royal Farm if that comes. This project I can see down, and the project that is going to be across from me is just adding more traffic. So adding this project is just insane. Route 8 is already very dangerous road to travel, and it was never designed to carry this volume of traffic as it does now. The traffic studies that are performed are not really relaying how dangerous the road really is. To average two different time frames make no sense whatsoever. It can get a failing grade at one heavy time slot and a good grade when not busy for a second time slot. Hence, we get a passing grade for road. What happens when you add even more traffic to the time slot that has the failing grade? There is no grade worse than F. At least I don't know one. And when you have a failing grade and you add more traffic, that is just disaster. I've been told that Queen Anne's County does not have their own traffic engineer on staff. That's a red flag for not getting the most accurate information. That is best for the county residents. When I attended the last meeting when Royal Farm project got tabled, a new travel study was to be performed. That very same evening when I came home around 7:30 time frame, there was an accident that involved two vehicles, and it was a pretty brutal one. It actually stopped traffic where they were just, sitting for a little, and then it was idling. And it took over 2 hours just to clean up that area by Kent Manor Road. In the short time I've lived on Kent Island, I have seen more accidents on Route 8 that I witnessed on Benfield Boulevard in Severna Park, and I thought I was coming over to the easy country lifestyle over here. I had no idea that Route 8 was that bad. It is really too bad that none of the commissioners live on or off Route 8. Unless you travel on that on a daily basis, you have no idea how dangerous that road really is. I hope that you each individually have taken the time to go and sit at certain intersections during heavy traffic to see how hard it is to make a left turn, that you really take your own life in your hands and you really have to find a little window where you can come over, and that's not how it should be. I hope you really take all these points in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Koch.
Good morning. My name is Fred Koch, and I live at 161 Topside Drive in Bay Bridge Cove. I'm against this proposal, and just to let you know my background, I've lived on Kent Island for 28 years. I have family. I have extended family, children, adult children, and grandchildren on the island. And I've been in Maryland since 1965 when I left the military. So I have a big stake in what's going on here, and I have had all the years that I've been here. You have heard and will hear many reasons why this project is bad for Kent Island. Traffic safety and congestion, commercial consumption of the sewer allocation, etc. We need to take a 10,000-foot look at this area of impact. This project is only one of 3 pending projects which will severely affect residents of Kent Island, especially those in a quarter-mile radius of Pier 1 Road and State Route 8. We are now also dealing with a proposal for a Royal Farm store and the rezoning of 3+ acres from countryside to urban commercial at the entrance to Kent Manor Drive. Again, all these projects are located within a quarter-mile radius of Pier 1 and SR8. This is a potential trifecta of trouble. If all these projects are approved, not only will the communities of Ellendale and Bay Bridge Cove be adversely affected, but it will surely create a choke point on State Route 8 for all residents south of the Route 50 interchange. Bear in mind that there is only one access and exit point to all communities south of that interchange. I'm asking that action on all these projects be tabled until Queen Anne's County develops a comprehensive plan for the impacted area and presents that plan to Kent Island residents for consideration before moving ahead on any of the three proposals. And this is not to even, this doesn't even mention the fact that we've got the proposal for a third Bay Bridge coming across the island. And that's another one we're going to have to face. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Joshua Willis.
Morning. I'm Josh Willis, a lifelong resident of Kent Island, and I also live down Route 8. I am against this proposal. For the main issues of safety and sewer, as previously mentioned, the commercial space and the 174 apartments will cause added stress on the intersection of Pier 1 Road and Route 8. Using an average of 2 people per apartment, which is 25% less than the national household average, that'd be a potential of 348 people, because most of us know that that will likely sell out since it's on Kent Island. That does not take into account how many shoppers will utilize whatever is in the commercial space below. As already mentioned, that intersection is pretty much the most dangerous intersection on Kent Island, maybe not counting one of the ones on Main Street. But it's also a dead-end trap, or creates a dead-end trap for everybody that lives down Route 8, because if anything happens there, there's only one way in, one way out. And I personally have been trapped down Route 8 a number of times from accidents near the airport. You guys did hear a lot of this same information on the proposal of Royal Farms. You understood the safety. Thank you. So please understand that this is just down the street, as you know, and it's pretty much the exact same reasons. And you did recognize those, so please take that into account here. I don't have the exact numbers. Helen mentioned a few of the numbers of the accidents, but one thing I do remember, there was a few cyclists and pedestrians hit in that area as well, at that intersection, which that can't be accounted for in the numbers of the traffic. Another irritating fact is just the sewer. The fact that we are supposed to only allow commercial development at this point, and somehow there's a loophole in section 18(1-52) that says that these apartments, which are built above commercial, are commercial apartments. We all know that's not true. Everybody that will live in there will use the bathroom, wash dishes, clean themselves, and use just as much water as anybody else living in a house. So somehow this was overlooked in the comp plan. I don't know. I don't blame anybody, but for some reason that's still being allowed, and we are using up the rest of the sewer, according to Steve Cahoon and DPW, that we do have available, which is a shame, because if we do need it in the future for anything serious, obviously that won't be available, so that 174 or 300 some people can live and see the Bay Bridge, and also add to the traffic in that area. Let's see. I do have a record of 15 emails at least that have come in, so I don't know if those will be read or not, but I hope you do acknowledge those as well. To resolve this, the only thing that I can see is that if you remove the 174 apartments from this whole situation, then obviously you've resolved the parking and some of the sewer damage that it will hit. The boat show also not being there anymore is a big impact on local business. I don't know if you saw, but there's a Capital Gazette article that specifically states the 1,000 people a day that attend it is a boom for business on Kent Island. So this is all the reasons as to why I'm against this. I hope you do understand where I'm coming from, especially as a lifelong resident of Kent Island, and I do want to see Kent Island prosper, but I think we're about maxed out on residents. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of public comment in the room. I understand we have a couple emails.
Yes, we had over 28 emails. We also have people that are in Zoom. If you're in Zoom and you want to make public comment, please turn on your camera or send us a message so that we know that's why you're here, because I haven't heard anyone respond to my message yet. I don't know. Did you want to say your thing first before we start? Okay.
Do you want to wait and see if anyone wants to?
Well, we can get them after the emails, I guess. We'll get them time to get situated.
I'm going to tag team this aspect of public comment with Bruce. And I just, again, want to thank all of the citizens who have been engaged. We've been, as I mentioned, we've been making sure with Beth Malasky, who's our communication specialist, we've been getting the message out through social media and making our materials available online. And that has prompted a lot of public engagement, which is exactly what we want and the reason that we're doing this. However, we are in a bit of a transition with implementing this procedure. And what I want to emphasize is that we're capturing all of the comments and the emails, but when these emails come in on the night before the meeting and in the morning of the meeting and during the meeting, we have a very difficult time conveying that information to our Planning Commission members. So we'll continue to work out how we're going to manage when we have larger projects like this, and to make sure that everyone's voices are heard and that this board receives all of the information. But so what Bruce and I are going to do is, between the two of us, we're going to summarize the intent of all of the messages that received that we were able to read. Obviously, we couldn't read messages that came in this morning or during the meeting today. But in general, the testimony you've already heard has been reiterated and captured in the 30 emails, is it?
I believe it totals 28 now.
28 now? Okay. 28 emails. The congestion, of course, the both residential and commercial vehicles that will impact the roadways is of concern. Safety is an enormous concern. The adequacy of the review of traffic, which you've heard has been stated several times. The impact on all of our public facilities, emergency services, fire and EMS, our police departments. There have been repeated comments about poor flow already on the island, and the impacts of more users on the sewage system having additional negative impacts on flow. There are also comments on impacts of water views and the impacts on the natural environment, and that breaking point between human habitation and protecting the habitat of other creatures and ensuring that water quality is captured. The scale of this development has been brought up as a concern in terms of the height of the structures, and also what you've heard relative to how the county looks at commercial apartments, and the feeling that this is a loophole in the sewer allocation policy has been reiterated in most of the messages that you've received.
Yeah, that was spot on. Yeah, I would say over 90% either mentioned multiple things that Amy had said, or that was their entire message. There were a couple emails that specifically point out a couple extra things. There was one person who is a firefighter that lives down Route 8 who said that he already notices problems down Route 8 for first responders, so that was a concern. There was one person who works in wildlife with nature, and there was a concern for that also. There were, I would say, 90% of the people live on Route 8 that send us comments, but there were other people from surrounding areas in Chester and Graysonville who also mentioned just how bad infrastructure is already surrounding area, not just Route 8, and how this could develop that into more of an issue. There was one person, and we'll say all their names of all the emails for public record, but Scott Dembowski was in favor of limited commercial development, but was opposed to it being used for additional residencies. But yeah, everyone pretty much had the same idea. Traffic was the issue, and a lot of people point out seeing accidents themselves.
Amy, before you leave, could Mr. Humphreys raise some good points, obviously. perhaps we could briefly talk about the timing for the APFO, which is going to address the traffic concerns if this moves forward.
Correct.
Mr. Humphreys may not agree with the timing of when those occur versus sewer allocation, but
Yes, so to clarify, our Department of Public Works, they do have engineers on staff, and they do review. Here comes one right now. I'll defer to Trey Porter to respond to your question.
we wanted to talk about the APFO and when and if that's going to come up if this project moves forward.
So typically sequencing with APFO in this process.
That's an acronym that we know. Perhaps you could explain what that is.
Okay, APFO, Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, it requires an APFS, which is a study for adequate public facilities. Typically, that's required after concept and before site plan. And that's going to, our department sends out a scoping letter to the consultant and the developer that identifies area, and this is specific to traffic, is what I'm speaking of now, identifies the areas that need to be included in the study, and the parameters of what the expectation is that we will get. I think some of the questions that we have from the public are in terms of getting the APFS, the study, after concept. Is that the right thing to do? And that was a question that Mr. Humphreys had a little while ago. I understand the question. It's part of our policy. It's part of the ordinance to have it sequenced that way. To make a change like that is a structural change that would have to be evaluated by staff. I'm not sure if, I believe that would have to be changed in the ordinance as well. So there would be a process that has to occur to make that change. In the past, there have been occasions where we've had traffic impact studies, TISs, that have been submitted to us prior to concept. We've basically, that's at the discretion of the developer to kind of to work with us ahead of time to identify any more challenges and provide more information. So that has happened in the past. It's not a requirement by the ordinance. It's not. It technically is out of sequence, but it does help shed light on potential problems. We do. I know there have been a couple questions about engineers on staff and traffic planners and engineers. The chief of our roads department is a professional engineer. He's a traffic engineer. We have 3 professional engineers on staff who are general civil engineers who can evaluate traffic. And then we also have consultants that we use on occasions. If we have a particularly challenging site that maybe needs some coordination between the county and the state, and there's existing safety issues, we have used consultants in the past and brought them. They've sat in front of you in the past and testified. So we do have pretty good oversight of traffic and traffic planning. But as far as the sequencing goes, so technically it's concept plan prior to APFO and the APFS, excuse me, and then and now switching gears a little bit to sewer. In this particular case, and Steve Cahoon had indicated this earlier, I think it's common for the APFS to be reviewed and it's not so much an approval, but it's adopted. The study will come in and we'll evaluate it. I think that the request that Steve and others in DPW have discussed is that we would like to see the APFS come in and have the sewer prior to sewer allocation. I think sometimes it's not uncommon for the APFS to follow granting of sewer allocation. I think on something like this where we're getting closer and closer to our cap, our thresholds here with the 29,000, I think that it would be beneficial to have the APFS reviewed and adopted prior to granting the sewer allocation, which is a process that involves the the county commissioners and the sanitary board.
There's some aside from it being a complicated project, there's some reason to do that in this circumstance because of the new comp plan. And there are elements of the comp plan that will inform the the study, the sewer study, because of the new language in the comp plan.
That's another reason for having the APFS evaluated prior to sewer allocation, yes.
And Chris, I'm glad that you brought that up because contrary to the...
I want to say that wasn't a completely novel idea. Steve Cahoon and I talked about this issue during the break. So I'll give Cahoon some credit for that.
Well, that's true. The comprehensive plan did not turn a blind eye to this matter. As a matter of fact, it was a core area of concern, and we did draft strategies to address not only moving forward with mixed-use development to look at how we look at commercial apartments and different mixed uses, but the comp plan also directly addresses the water and sewer plan and generating a new sewage policy to address issues that we're talking about right now, especially with the depletion of our allocation. So all of these fresh comprehensive plan strategies are being applied to this project.
Amy, if I can ask, one of the citizens who testified a little bit earlier, if I heard him correctly, stated that his desire for us to have a comprehensive plan, if I heard him correctly. So for clarification for those in the room and those viewing and those on Zoom, could you just in a nutshell describe the very rigorous comprehensive plan efforts we've been through for the last 18 months?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we are required by the land use article to update our comprehensive plan every 10 years. We've just completed that update. It took us about 2.5 years to do so. And we systematically reviewed every chapter of that plan. Unfortunately, the pandemic occurred in the midst of our update, and many of those citizen meetings were held online. In a way, I think, I'm not saying the pandemic was fortunate at all, but but if there is a positive outcome, that I think that having those virtual meetings really brought a lot more citizens to the table because of the convenience of attending those sessions. So I feel like in a lot of ways we had a lot of really engaged citizen participation during that update. This update specifically, the county grappled with a very unique issue, having realized we're the first county in the state of Maryland to deal with this nutrient cap limitation. And so we spent a lot of time through the comprehensive rezoning requests looking at our growth areas and looking at our land uses, getting very clear direction. Once the comp plan is enacted, and ours was enacted in May, all of the other plans will eventually be updated, but there's also been legislation that solidifies the fact that even when our other plans aren't updated, our comp plan has to be followed. We have to be consistent with it. So we do have an overarching comp plan that is current and is directing most of our all of our decisions, but a lot of those key principles are being applied to this project. I think that I heard that a comprehensive study of traffic was also desired, and we do have a traffic study for this area that DPW staff is currently looking at updating.
It's the Route 8 corridor plan that's probably now 10 to 15 years old.
It's 7 years old.
Oh, 7, okay.
7 years old. And yes, we do have the corridor study. And that really was intended to identify priority state funding priorities. That was something where we looked at, porosity between north and south on 5301 and how to, we were making a case with the state as far as having the importance of porosity, because when the Reach the Beach program came through, it really segmented north and south and caused issues. We all are aware of that. We kind of pitched it to the state in terms of emergency vehicles and safety, and there's obviously nuisance and things like that, clearly. But that was something that was done, may have been 8 years ago now, 7 or 8 years. It's been a while. Did any of those become priorities on state funding? The answer is no. We continue to work with the state, and the state obviously prioritizes safety over nuisance and things like that. So a lot of the funding didn't make it here for those projects. But that is something that we do have a record of. It's in the books. It's something that we refer to occasionally. I do have 2 other points if I can make quickly. Going back to sanitary allocation, sewer allocation, it's important. The reason why the sequencing on that is kind of important, and it's something that was addressed in the comp plan too, is that we don't want to look at the APFS and say, okay, well, this is adequate. We're good with this, after we grant sewer allocation, because we need to evaluate that ahead of time. That's important, because if you grant allocation and then the APFS comes in and demonstrates that you should have had more, it's a problem. The applicant is, the developer's already paid that out, that transaction's completed. So there is a little bit of a sequencing issue there, and I think it's something the comp plan's identified. And but yeah, we certainly would want to evaluate, in an ideal world, evaluate the APFS in terms of sanitary and sewer flows or sewer adequacy prior to the discussions of allocation. Does that make sense? One other point that I wanted to make, going way back to, so the shared parking. This is where planning and zoning in my department, DPW, are going to be in conflict, because I want less parking, right? Because I'm concerned with stormwater management and water quality. Of course, they are too, but their concern is more with parking. So DPW as a department, we're in favor of shared parking because it reduces the impervious area and reduces runoff and reduces pollutants going into the water. So we're in support of that in so much, this is the caveat, in so much that planning is agreeable to it, and it fits into the requirement, and the applicant makes a case for it, and you guys agree with it. But so there is a reason why shared parking works, and we encourage that in my department for that reason, for impervious area.
And we don't disagree with that. It's just finding that happy medium where the minimum is met and we can achieve that water quality, which.
Yeah. There's a balance to be made, and it's not that we're in conflict, but we have different objectives. Yes.
Okay. Bruce, would you like to list all the names?
Sure.
And where they're from?
Oh, I didn't get where they're from.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I will say the majority are on Route 8.
Okay.
But they are in the public comment, so their address is in the emails. We got emails from Historic Ken Island, Jay Corsi Willis, Robert and Laura Jones, Kathy Furno, William Tablio, Leslie Pareco, Sean Cummings, Teresa Tamburino, Mary Dawkins, Vivian Mossman, Rhonda Morris, Chloe Lawler, Steve Jorgensen, Tara Mitchell, Corey Kazmarak, Linda Henley, Deborah Goldman, Chuck and Janet Melson, Henry Clark, Sheila Willis, Mike Newman, Josh Melton, Jacqueline Desaunier, Julia Slackham, Fred Koch, Kate Lesney, Scott Dembowski, and we had one email that didn't have a name assigned, but it was the email came from a Smythe or Smith, and it might have been Miss Suzanne, who's already in here. I'm not sure. Yes. And then we did have one voicemail that we'd like to play.
Okay.
Okay, 1 second.
When did the voicemail come in?
I believe yesterday.
My name is Leslie Perico, and I am leaving a message for the Planning Commission. I'd like to go on record to say that I'm against the Bay Bridge Marina Concept Plan, SP number 22-02-00686. The multi-use facility that's being planned for the Ken Island Marina on Pier 1 Road. It's my understanding that sewer allocation was reserved specifically for commercial development, and I understand there will be residential use in there. It's a very dangerous intersection. I've experienced that personally, and I am against this multi-use plan. Thank you.
Did we ever get anybody on Zoom or no?
No one ever indicated or turned the camera on, so I don't think anyone in Zoom's here for make comment.
Okay. All right, any further questions from the commissioners? Any proposal? Any suggestions?
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and, this is with regard to the parking reduction. After hearing and reading everything that had been provided to us and has been provided to us, I'm proposing that resolved at the Planning Commission regarding the request by Bay Bridge Marina LLP for parking reduction of 165 parking spaces from the required 884 spaces to 719 spaces under the provisions of 18-1-83-A-2, and as more particularly described in Planning and Zoning File SP 22-02-0086, hereby finds the proposed shared parking scenario shown on the concept plan and described within the shared parking justification memo provided by the traffic group has adequately demonstrated that the mix of uses will generate peak parking at different times during the day, which would allow for shared parking, and hereby grants the requested parking reduction. And as an aside, I just note that our materials provided said that no agencies that reviewed the concept plan had offered any objections to this approval. So that is my motion.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, what about the concept plan?
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Okay.
Resolved that the Planning Commission regarding the request by Bay Bridge Marina LLP for concept plan approval for the creation of an approximately 119,458 square foot development that will be comprised of a mix of uses, including 53,811 square feet of existing commercial space located within the existing marina and boat repair and maintenance buildings, existing restaurant, and existing office buildings, as well as three new 4-story commercial apartment buildings with 65,647 square feet of first floor commercial space and 174 apartment units on the upper floors, and as more particularly described in Department of Planning and Zoning File SP number 22-02-0086, hereby finds: 1, the concept plan is consistent with the goals and objective of Queen Anne's County zoning and subdivision regulations and the 2022 comprehensive plan. And hereby grants concept plan approval subject to the following conditions: any remaining edits and/or documents required by the Department of Public Works, Planning and Zoning, or any other reviewing agency be reviewed and approved. Number 2, the architecture and overall site design must substantially reflect the documents provided.
Which, to be clear,
Have a
is
second.
the first floor commercial space, as best we know, is retail or office,
Exactly,
not a hotel.
exactly.
Do you want me to redo the whole
We
thing?
have a second?
Or no?
No.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to offer up a concern that I have, that at the applicant's own admission, there's likelihood, potentially high, that they're deviating from the purpose from which they've come before us today. for the first floor office/retail versus potential living space, hotel space, suites, and that this concept plan is not yet ripe for our review.
Madam Chair, I would agree with Commissioner Lay that we've heard here, and I commend candor on the part of the developer, that they may not be able to execute the plan that they have put before us or may not wish to. And it seems to me that we should, if possible, ask them to revise it. I don't know what's involved in that, to be honest, but that we should take a second look at it or possibly have more discussions about it. Thank you.
May I say something first? What I would say to that, I think by the developer's own admission, he's talking about a $60-some million project here. And I think for anyone to think that something this complex might at the end look exactly like it does today in these plans is not being realistic. And, you know, and I think the developer is smart enough to know. He's been around the block. I know him by reputation. I've never met him. But it's incumbent upon him to re-jump all the hurdles every time he makes the changes. And so it's not like he's got free reign. This is just a concept plan approval. This isn't approval to dig. He hasn't gotten approval to dig one shovel full of dirt yet. So he's still got a ways to go, and he's got a few hurdles left to jump. And that's what I would say.
With all due respect, Mr. Sylvester, the change that being suggested, be it formally or not, it was verbally stated by the applicant, is not an insignificant change. Most of the time we review concept plans, they are for a tweak here, a movement of a building there, a twist of something here to avoid infrastructure or what have you, right? We often use the term significantly similar to what was proposed. And to me,
it's actually in the motion.
yeah, that it is clear to me that they're coming, at least on paper in the staff report and through all the stack meetings, that their proposal was for first floor office/retail. And to hear that change to potentially residential/hotel suites changes a lot of the allocation and a lot therefore of the parking, of the sewer allocation. There's too much of a lift or too much of a delta between those two ideas for me to responsibly promote or pass along to forward.
But now, Joe, we're in deliberations now. We're in deliberations.
What's before you, and if it
No.
changes, we'll have to come
If you have to listen to Mr. Stevens, you're going to have to listen to everybody else. We're in deliberations now.
Okay. Mr. Stevens, would you like to come up and talk to us?
The short point that I just made was that we are not requesting anything but what's before you. Mr. Petrie had talked about some ideas he had. He's been around the block, as Mr. Sylvester said. If he changes something, he'll have to come back to you again. That's my point. He can't change it.
You agree that he has to come back for concept plan approval if it goes from office retail to hotel?
Yes, I would. I think that's going to have to come back. He's going to have to talk to you guys again.
Concept plan
I mean,
approval.
we don't want to think we're saying that that's the
Yes.
deal.
Yes, that's the deal. That is the deal. I don't see how he gets around it under the provisions of the code.
And you're okay with that, Mr. Petrie?
Yes, I'm okay with it, but understand that a hotel is a commercial use.
But we'll address that in
Yeah,
future time.
but yes, if in fact that becomes a solution or a way to proceed, we'll be back in here with the Chesapeake Bay Beach Club as a tenant. But right now it's conversation. I guess I shouldn't have even mentioned it, but I was trying to be forthright with you. There are lots of different options here, but we've got to
Right, and we're trying to be forthright with you.
understood.
Okay.
So
So that everybody understands, if it changes, you have to come back.
100%, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Petrie, if I may, while you're there still, at what point during the stack conversation process was that idea put on the table before staff?
Oh,
going from
sure. I have
residential-
mentioned multiple ideas with staff. I can't move ahead until I get a concept plan approval and hopefully get water and sewer allocation. And until I get that, I don't I don't really have anything that I can proceed with. So once I have that, then I can come back to this group and say, yes, I'm going to build exactly what you see, or I'm going to probably have 2 or 3 different ideas in my head on how we proceed with this. But everybody I talk to says, well, do you have water and sewer? Because without it, you don't have anything. And so that's really why I'm trying to get to this point, and then if there's changes to it, we'll come back.
I don't think you heard. You can't get water and sewer if you change your concept.
I get that. I understand that.
You get it?
I get it.
You're talking to somebody who doesn't go through the process all the time.
I think
Staff will note that it was recommended that he not proceed until he had it figured out what he wanted to do, and it was pretty disingenuous to come to the board and present something that they very well knew was likely to change. I wasn't comfortable bringing this to you with personally knowing it was going to change.
I'm not saying it's going to change. I may build exactly what you see here. I'm not suggesting that anything else.
I'm just relaying what we told you. That's
Okay,
all.
understood.
And what you said right here.
Okay.
Jeff had a comment.
Jeff?
Chair, if I may. So, globally, conceptually, if this is the plan that is before us, I can probably support that. I share in the concerns that Mr. Lay has, or Commissioner Lay has, in the fact that it's more than likely going to change as per the owner's own admission. Part of the concept things that I did miss was, I understand that we're going to have affordable housing. However, I would like the owner to strongly consider, as he comes to site plan approval, to avoid the fee in lieu and dedicate via covenant. Just, this is thought processes, and some food for thought for him, to maintain those affordable and workforce housing units. Make sure that he complies with the public amenities and the amenities for this particular development, none of which were kind of talked about in the concept, which truly leads me to believe that this is going to change. And I do share the concerns of Commissioner Lee that this is kind of get my foot in the door and then I'll change it and we'll go from there. So thank you for that opportunity to comment, Madam Chair.
Mr. Drummond, can you help us out with any language that can amend the motion currently before us to provide a level of comfort that the project that we're approving is as it was discussed with staff? And while I understand that the hotel suites wrap under that term commercial, but I'm trying to look for a way to amend Mr. Sylvester's motion to provide a level of comfort to all of us that what we're seeing is what we're approving and not perhaps something changed down the line.
What was the generic condition about substantially something or other?
Referenced architecture and overall site design.
Right,
Didn't say anything about the uses.
Right. In other words, to provide a level of comfort that should a change like Mr. Petrie has perhaps proffered would have to come back before us.
The architecture, overall site design, and mix of commercial, I'm just talking out loud here, so mix of commercial uses.
Commercial/office, right?
Well, commercial, offices are commercial, and what's been represented is the mix of commercial is commercial apartments, office, and retail. But substantially reflect the documents provided. So
Can we make that amendment, Mr. Sylvester?
I can't repeat what he just said, if that's what you're asking me.
Well, no, we're asking if what he just said is okay with you.
I'd like you to read it again.
So the condition
Do it on the fly.
would then, condition number 2, the architecture, overall site design, and mix of commercial uses must substantially reflect the documents provided, which have included office and retail on the first floor.
I would agree. I'm okay with that.
Are you okay with that? Do I have a second?
I didn't second that.
I said, do I have a second?
why
I
are you
didn't
looking at
say
me?
you
I'm
seconded.
I'm sorry.
I said, are you okay with the way it's
No, I
written
disagree
in?
with the process. I'm not in favor of this, of voting in favor of this currently,
Okay.
as it sits.
That's all right.
I'd second the,
Madam Chair, I will second Mr. Sylvester's motion as amended.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Tillman?
Nay.
3 opposed?
three to three.
Okay. Yes.
What did,
You said in favor, correct?
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Well, I didn't want another repeat of what we had a year ago.
In support. Okay, staff report. Okay. And
I would like,
any public comments?
well, before we go to that, this new development of having emails come in and voicemails come in, and then either reading them or reciting a outline of what the emails have said, and then putting the voice messages through the audio system does raise some interesting legal questions about whether or not those folks have actively participated in the proceedings and may therefore have standing to appeal any decision made by the Planning Commission. Typically, to have standing to appeal an administrative decision, for example, the one that was just made on the concept plan approval, you have to have participated in the proceeding. Participation usually means, always in the past has meant appearance at the administrative proceeding, and either coming forward and testifying, or at the very least announcing your presence and your position one way or the other on whatever it is that's before the administrative body. I have to think about whether sending in an email and having it either read or described, or listening to a voicemail, that voice message, gives anyone who, whether that's participation for purposes of appeal. I have to think about it.
And in truth, I appreciate that you bring this up as a point of clarification, because we do need that. And also, just to let you know, because this is new, a new process and a new procedure and a new way of engaging, we are going to come up with some definitive participation steps and be very transparent about it, because it's a very positive development.
You have to have some point of a cutoff.
But we do. But we have to have some means, because some means of collecting the information and conveying the information, because you are making a decision now. So that responsibility of receiving your packet of information, which we require that the applicants meet a deadline to submit so that we can convey that information to you in a timely manner and make it available for public review. We likewise need to have a similar structure in place for comments received, and so that you can also have time to actually synthesize those comments. So we are thinking through that, and we will be providing the public with some procedural public service announcements that will come in the form of postings on social media and other means, maybe providing handouts and checklists. But we are in the process of setting some standards in place so that this is all very clear and legally supportive, able to be legally supported.
And I can see, certainly in the future, someone who sends an email, has it read, doesn't like the outcome at the planning, we're talking about the planning commission, could happen in any administrative proceeding, then going to the Board of Appeals on appeal and having the applicant say that that person didn't participate sufficiently and therefore doesn't have standing to take the appeal.
Are you saying that they really need to be here?
Well, that's always been the case before.
Right.
Because that's all that a appellate court has had to consider, is people appearing in person, because there weren't all these other electronic options. So it's an area of the law that may not have been addressed yet.
But how do you balance that, Counselor, with submitting written testimony,
Well, I'm
printed
not sure
out,
that-
delivered, and put in Amy's desk
Right. I may
2
find
days
it-
ago?
Right. I might find a case where that has occurred, and someone a court has ruled that written submissions such as that are sufficient for standing or are not sufficient. Right. For example, there's a difference between Mr. Humphreys, who showed up here today, and the folks and spoke, and the folks who sent in by email. Are they both? Do they both have the same standing for appeal if they don't like your decision?
Or Zoom in, right? They're
Yeah.
not physically in the room.
Right. Exactly. I don't know the answer yet.
I don't know. Are they not physically in the room? I mean,
I would think that if you show up on the
Mr.
screen
Reese
and
is
speak,
considered to
that's-
be part of the
yeah,
meeting.
I would think so offhand. Where's the cutoff? That's
a fine line.
Where's the level of participation that's needed to have standing to appeal?
So who do you do? What do you do? Do you write to the Attorney General and ask him for a decision?
No, just have to take a look at the case law to see if this, and then if there's no case law, come up with my best opinion and see if ultimately that's the correct one if it gets challenged. My guess is this has come up somewhere in the country before I thought of it. I mean,
I've been involved.
Come up.
Yes, sure.
Introduce yourself again. Sorry.
My name is Dennis Leahy. I live on Kent Island. I've had some operations with the circuit court system during COVID. And judicial procedures, Zoom was positively accepted during that whole time.
That's because, at least in Maryland, there were administrative orders from the chief judge of the Court of Appeals. That's quite a bit different than what we're talking about here.
How so?
Yeah.
Because the law on standing, meaning your right, one's right to note and appeal, are fixed by either statute, which we don't have here, or by case law. And the case law has always required some level of physical participation in the administrative proceeding. Is that physical participation, I'm pointing at the Zoom camera, Zoom thing, is an email sufficient participation? Is a voice message sufficient participation? That, we need to figure that out, that's all.
If I may interject one more thing. Currently, magistrates are hearing civil proceedings on Zoom. Now, I don't know how that all works out. I just know Zoom is acceptable. And the aspect of going back to citizens having a voice, I'm retired, I can be here, and most people here are retired. And I think with modern technology, and case law is an issue, and that has to be worked out in some way. I don't know how that gets worked out. But we have to have a voice. And with technology, there is no excuse not to have people present themselves and have their opinion heard. And that's how I strongly feel. But I do know right now magistrates all over Maryland are hearing cases on Zoom and testimony on Zoom. And that's, again, my limited experience. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. All right. Is there any other business? I will entertain my favorite.
Does anybody have public comment?
I asked for public comment before.
Oh, sorry. I think they didn't.
Oh, would you like to say something? Sure.
I'm Suzanne Smythe, and this is only the second time I've ever gone to any of these meetings.
Smythe, could you?
Oh, sorry. I'm lower than other people. This is all new to me, talking in front of a board. I just feel like as a citizen, you are passing this project to go further. I feel like we're not heard. We have a big problem, and as a new person starting to be interested in what's going around me, I just feel like you are not really listening to the citizens, and maybe this is not the time where I say this, but I know we're a lot that are very concerned about all the stuff that's going on, and I hope you will kind of think about that we're people that live in this corridor, and we have to deal with this daily. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other public comment?
Can I have one quick comment?
Sure. You have to introduce yourself again, sir.
Will do. Dave Humphreys, Kent Island, Bay Bridge Cove, actually. We're in a situation where if you want to be fair to the applicant and the applicant fair to you, you want to get things up front. We have a finite limit on sewer situation. It's a number. It's real. We actually have a finite limit on the traffic issues I was speaking of, and that's why I felt we had to get that up front. Because let's say you you get a traffic impact statement and you do an honest, strong evaluation and you go, it ain't gonna work. And then this guy has been put out for how many hundred thousands of dollars for a concept plan that if he heard that up front, he'd say, I'll do it differently. That's why mobility is so important. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Nothing virtually.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Madam, I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.